Hello and welcome, everybody. This is David and Courtney, welcoming you to the preface, the introduction, I think we might say, to this series of podcasts, which we are calling Idle and Blessed. And one of the things we want to do in this episode is to explain to you why two really serious, really practical consultants would come up with such a weird and woo-woo title as that. But we did, and we're very proud of it, and we're going to explain why we've done that as well. And we'll tell you a bit about the forthcoming episodes and how we're going to try and structure them and the sorts of people we're going to have on. So this is just by way of welcome. This sets up the scene of the whole podcast, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah.
So, Courtney.
We are very serious and practical, but also very unserious and impractical.
Yeah.
You can hear me laughing through that.
My mentor used to call it style width. Can you do,
Yeah.
you can do both extremes.
Yeah, we have a lot of breadth. And a lot of depth, yes. But I think one reason we started this conversation, David, and this is kind of, I think, entertaining for people to hear is, started this podcast, I should say, is because we were told we were doing a podcast when we didn't think we were doing a podcast.
Yes,
because
we started ourselves talking.
Yeah, just kind of like, hey, maybe that's an interesting conversation that we could take a bit of for somebody at some point. Yeah. And then outsiders started saying, do you realize that you're actually essentially doing a podcast? We're like, well, okay. So, that's exactly how serious we are. So, but I do think it's an interesting point. And one reason we may have landed on this title is because, I think we've been re-anchoring perspective from this very intense container we've both known for a long time at work. And these really serious and real and important conversations we have every day with clients, and not moving it, but redirecting some of that energy to really look at the people and the humans and the time behind all of that.
Yes.
Because I think one of our first knitting factors was recognizing that people wear busyness like a badge sometimes, but they also have this sense that time is sort of overtaking them instead of vice versa, and that time is more of a calendar than a concept. And so yes. I think we both prioritized taking a step back and saying, okay, hold on, but what is under all of that? What are the people actually saying? What are the people doing? How are they connecting? What's going on? And do you really maybe have a lot more access to changing the balance or the flow of your time than you thought you did?
Yeah, beautifully said. Yeah, I mean, even in that, there's so much. Because I mean, I think the idea you had there of the things that tie this together under the obviously serious and practical things that we in the business world tend to get too much focused on. Let's do the next thing. This is deliberately a chance to sort of sink down into what's going on underneath, because certainly certain things are never going to go away from us. One is when there's too much to do in the time we have available, who are we going to be in the face of that? Mm-hmm. The client who only a couple of weeks ago, and I said, is there anything else that we can do in this session? He said, yeah, if you can give me 4 more hours in the day. And we both laughed. And as we were close to call, I was thinking, but even if it had said 14, it would never be enough. Mm-hmm. The whole day on top of the day would never be enough, because there's too much going on. It will expand to fill the time available. So therefore, in the face of that, absent of better time management systems and calendar management systems, who are going to be in the face of that?
Yeah.
And then the second thing, which will never go away, of course, is what does it mean to be human in the face of this world we're living in at the moment?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and we've taken the title of our podcast and some of the references we make from a really special poem by Mary Oliver. But I think, there's also this idea that is really interesting and important to hold right now, which is humanity and communication and connection and the multiplicity of what we have inside each of us is very future-proof and AI-proof. Yet people feel really disempowered and scared and like they don't know what to do with a lot of the things that are happening right now. And I think that, at least for me part of the motivation here is to give people back some of that control isn't the right word, but like sense of autonomy and sense of ability to have purpose and to be masterful even if things are changing so
Yes.
quickly, and even if they don't know the technical side of everything all the time or can't see the future, that
Yes.
if they can be more human, knowing themselves, knowing others, communicating better, seeing
Yes.
what's going on for other leaders, and choosing to lead and step up and arrive and rise,
Yes.
there's a huge difference to be made. And just the
Yes.
feeling that you don't have to be at the mercy of is such a big deal.
Yes. Huge. Yeah, just in a couple of things. I mean, because when we ask, as we are doing through this podcast series, what does it mean to be more human in this present moment? That sounds like some sort of abstract thing, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not. If we take that as therefore, how can I choose to communicate in this next minute, 10 minutes, hour? Deep down, if we can slow down, if we can access some wisdom that comes from slowing down, we know. I mean, I've made a living out of training people on communication skills all my life. And increasingly, I start by saying, you know when you communicate well, and you know when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't communicate well, we have all sorts of reasons and excuses and explanations as why not, the circumstance and well, all of that's significant and should not be put aside. But we always have that agency as well.
Right, right.
Um,
It's interesting. I find it fascinating the emotion you're going to in helping the listeners grasp kind of where we want to go with this. And I also want to add to that we also have these really amazing frames that we both use, these theories and philosophies and methods and things that
mm,
we can show people some structure around so that they can feel like they can learn it if that's their way of doing things, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think that's another gift of what we're trying to put together here is, we want to be able to show you how the process behind something that feels good works,
Yes.
and the process behind identifying what isn't going to feel good before you get there. Because
That's right.
you don't necessarily have to put your foot in it all the time.
Yeah, yeah, gee, Lordy, there's so much advice out there which sounds like that's an easily implementable idea. And as you're reading it, you think this would not make me feel good. Even if I manage to do it well, this is
All
not going to make
right.
me feel good. So yeah, it's absolutely, what when we feel good, what is going on underneath? I think that's a beautiful way of thinking about it.
Right. Well,
Um,
and I think in addition to that, we can say a lot and do a lot, and we could probably talk for hours on end. And also, I'm aware that we have a lot of people that we know that have really interesting, fascinating stories, and the fabric of what they do is so intricate, and
mm,
they have gotten quite masterful at certain ways of seeing things. And just by hearing some of their stories, I think our listeners might be able to feel better, just like, oh,
yes,
there's someone out there doing that actively. I think that's
yes,
a big foundation here too, is we've talked about this a lot, like trust being an active process and measurable, change
mm,
having to do with action,
mm,
doing things with our hands and with our minds, and coming up with something innovative it's like a
yes,
lost art, but I feel like there's a huge resurgence in interest in it.
yes.
And I think I would love to give whatever I can to contribute to people learning how to do those things more, and listening to more stories and absorbing more hope from what they get out of what's really out there.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's I think what is required. It's the act of courage is to be more human in these ways,
Right,
to
right,
consider more our communication, to think more about being 10-15% more empathetic to the person in front of us, because we know where it gets us when we go into judgment and whatever.
right.
So yeah, I think I'm certainly looking forward to this. I would just, if you don't mind, love to say a bit about the poem as well. That
Yes.
is the inspiration for this, because we did come to it together through various routes, and I'm geeking out on my English language and literature degree that we get to be inspired by a poem. But we'll put this up, I think, on the show notes of this episode. We'll put the whole poem from Mary Oliver out there, because I think it's just beautiful because this is a poem about. What's it about? People say, what's this poem about? Well, it's a poem about somebody who goes into a field of long grass and sits down and then a butterfly rests on her hand, and that's it.
Yeah.
And but the question that I think a lot of people will know from this poem, because I think it's one of those things that ends up on like fridge magnets and
Yeah.
stickies to inspire us, is the last couple of lines of the poem are, "Tell me, what is it that you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?"
Right.
And what the poet, and this is where poetry, I get so passionate about poetry, seems so like wishy-washy and fluffy. Actually, this is a really provocative poem. It
Hmm.
said, "I'm lying down in this field having the time of my life today. What are you doing?" And the
Yeah.
request is the request is not to judge what I'm doing with my way I've chosen to live my life. It's to question, what are you doing and why are you doing it, and what's the basis for that. Um, and so it is the possibility of, we may not be able to lay down in the field every day of our lives, but can we do it a little more often, or can we bring some of that field into the workplace and have it be not so hectic and screen driven and a bit more
Right.
human? Yeah.
Right, right. Well, and I think that we pursue on a regular basis in this conversation the question of what time really means and if fast is really fast. And
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the other day and putting it on something that I was creating for work I do, like on my business side, I guess.
Mm.
The future is not faster, it's more human,
Yes.
that
Yes.
it is fast, but the humanity side of it is what's interesting. And the humanity
Yes.
side of it is where you find the ability to be at peace with the pace.
Yes.
So I think if you can take those moments to lie down in that field, or you can take those moments to go slow, to go fast, or whatever, and I think we'll get into this with our guests too, like their perspective on that,
Yes.
then what does that mean for your adjustment in your stress, your neuroscience, your cortisol levels, your impact at work, your ability to show up as a human in your family? Like,
Mm.
how are all those things shaped by just a simple idea that you're not rushing toward disaster all the time?
Yes.
And I think we really have gotten quite afraid in the last handful of years. There's an optimism that just kind of like evaporated really quickly.
Yes.
And then we went to some pretty bad behavior for a while. Like, I was seeing really bad emotional intelligence at work a few
Yes.
years ago. And emotional intelligence is fairly rare too. So, it has to be grown and developed and utilized. Like, it's interesting to me that we'll spend all this money on programs and coaches and all these things, but we forget to invest in things like this.
Mm. Yeah. Beautiful. And I think that's worth saying, therefore, something about the guests that we're going to be inviting onto this podcast, because what we're not going to be, who we're not going to be speaking to too much. We'll have some, but not too much, are people from the business world and, other consultants and the like, because that's a bit of a closed circle. And I'm not convinced, even though I'm a contributor to it, how much wisdom there has been generated in the organizational development and leadership development field that's truly made a difference for people. But what we are going to be doing is inviting people who you would not expect to be on a podcast about time, humanity, life, and work. People with very different perspectives. Why? Because we're interested in their stories. We want to reach out to people who have these fascinating stories in very different walks of life. And because we want to find out, if it's true for you over there, it's probably true for us here. If
Hmm.
it's true for you in whatever field that is that you are the expert in or passionate about, and we can see that that could be true for us here in the organizational leadership development world, then it's probably worth listening to. So that's the sort of guests that you will expect us to hear on this podcast.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, to start out, we have some people on the schedule already, and they are unlikely suspects,
Yes,
unusual suspects,
yes,
and exciting, very exciting ones. And I'm very thrilled about the fact that some of these people are people I deeply care about and have known for a long time, and actually have shaped a lot of my work by
yes,
understanding their points of view.
yes,
And that phrase from Mary Oliver really was a big part of why I started going toward the human several years ago, and I think why you and I kind of crossed paths, David.
yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all for us about that. I mean, and I think as well about these other themes that we've talked about for amongst ourselves for so long, energy and wisdom, and then, time and humanity and life and work, and what a fabulous it's the equivalent of, I think, Courtney, this podcast is the equivalent of Courtney and I lying down in the field full of grass and just really pondering, this wild, precious life that we've been given, what's the best we can do with what we've been given, and I'm excited for this podcast series.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really, really fun. And I think that we are very open related to people we'd like to speak to. So if you're listening and you know somebody or you are somebody and you think we need to hear your story, please reach out. We'd love
Yes.
to talk to you. And if you have specific questions for us that you want to learn more about related to any of the threads of what we're talking about, please ask because we'd like to answer. This is meant to be quite an interactive process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, well, thank you, Courtney.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody, for listening to this. We'll see you as this podcast develops.
It's going to be exciting.